everyone, it's Zahava. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing the October reading wrap up. As always, I have a stack of books next to me along with some notes. So let's go right ahead and jump into it. And we will start with some reading stats, which you should be seeing next to me over here somewhere. And I'm going to tell you exactly what they are. Now, before we talk about the reading stats, I just want to say that the numbers are not going to make sense. And the reason that the numbers don't make sense is because I have some physical books, which I physically have on my TBR, but I listened to this month on audio because it was the easiest way to consume them. I had a really busy month and I had to do a mix of audio and physical reads. So because of that, you will see that the numbers don't add up, but they do, but they don't, okay? So the first thing I want to say is that out of these books, I had 7 DNFs. I had 2 5-star reads. I had 17 books in total out of the 13 that I read. Don't ask, that came from the library. So obviously that means there were 4 DNFs within those 17 books, but I did use my library, or at least 17 borrows from my library this month, which I think is really good in terms of library use, but I ended up only finishing 13 books this month. There were 0 ARCs and 0 advanced listeners copies, and 6 of the books were from my physical TBR, but some of them may also have been audio reads, but it gets them off my physical TBR, so I'm counting them. And I'll tell you what they are right now. So first we're gonna start, as we always do, with the DNFs. And I'll tell you just briefly why these books were DNF'd, and we can discuss, as always, in the comments, any thoughts that you guys may have, or anything that I may have disappointed you guys by DNFing, because I'm sure there's going to be some. You know that you always will get controversial DNFs on this channel, and I'm trying to bring it, okay? So the first one that I DNF'd this month is Christopher Buehlman's The Black Tongue Thief. That just didn't work for me. I made it a couple of 100 pages in, maybe between 150 and 200 pages in, and I don't know, it lost its momentum for me. I was appreciative. I always tend to start out really strong in a new book. If you've been here before, you know this about me. I get really excited and I think, okay, this is going to be a great read. And then at some point it just kind of either plateaus or plummets for me. And then I lose momentum and then I just get bored and disinterested. And that's kind of what happened with The Black Tongue Thief for me. Not exactly sure why. I just didn't care what was happening in the story. And I think that a lot of the reason that I read it, and I believe that I reported upon this in an earlier vlog, is because I had mistakenly bought that copy of The Daughters of War, not knowing it was a prequel to The Black Tongue Thief. And there's just only so much satire that I can handle in a book. So as you know, I'm not a Terry Pratchett fan. I don't know, it wasn't working for me. And I'm hoping that The Daughters of War, based on the fact that it will have to do with daughters that have gone to war when there has been a big sort of wipeout of the men in that society, I think that it will probably read a little bit better for me. I know that I had a discussion with my booktube friend Danny from Danny Dabbles, whose channel I will link down below, and she had said to me that she also enjoyed Daughters of War a lot better than The Black Tongue Thief. So before I unhaul it unread, I am going to give The Daughters of War a chance to wow me, but The Black Tongue Thief, I don't know, I just didn't want to read it anymore, and I found myself looking for other books to pick up, so I ended up DNFing that one. The next book that I DNF'd, if you've seen this vlog, you will know, is The Deep by River Solomon. That one I DNF'd on the last chapter. It was 9 pages before the end of the book, and your girl could not do it anymore. That book was such a slog, and I am really worried because I have a copy of Sorrowland, and it's by the same author, and I'm just hoping that it's not going to be as painful to get through. So The Deep, nope. I also surprisingly DNF'd Replaceable You by Mary Roach. Now, I have read Mary Roach's entire backlist. I've been reading Mary Roach for years now. I've read everything she's written, but somewhere around chapter 8 or 9, she lost me. And I don't know if it's just because she's sort of nearing the end of her writing career. I'm not saying that she's not writing anymore. I'm just wondering if she wants to continue writing, because whatever she gave in that book was just not up to par with her previous releases. And I feel like I was really disappointed. The subject matter just didn't keep my interest. By chapter 8 or 9, I skipped chapter 10, and by chapter 11, I didn't want to pick up the book anymore, so that was a DNF, and it is the first time and only time that has ever happened to me with a Mary Roach book, so I don't really know what happened there, but I feel kind of bad because I asked the library to buy that one for me, and they did, and I didn't even finish reading it. So yeah, not her best work, and I was not super enthused by that one. Then I DNF'd A Murder for Magpies. This was a library book that I took out. I read one chapter. I didn't like the writing style. I didn't feel the need to go on. Then there was Deception by Gaslight. This one had so much promise. It's the first in a series of 4 books by the same author, which I am assuming centers around the same 2 protagonists. I thought it was going to be a mystery. I was not prepared for a romance. And I think that that's what kind of got to me, because the romance was kind of an insta-love vibe, and I'm not a fan of insta-love. Like, I really need a build-up. I don't want to hear about how attractive the one person finds the other. I want it to sneak up on my protagonist like it sneaks up on most of us. So I'm not a big believer in insta-love, and though they didn't necessarily have an insta-love in this series, there was definitely an insta-attraction, and it was a mutual thing, and I just was not prepared for a romance, because in the book tags on Goodreads, no one said there was going to be a romance anywhere, or at least it wasn't part of the first initial 7 or 8 tags that you see on your screen when you click on. So I wasn't prepared for that, and then about halfway through the book, I got so tired of reading about how good-looking this one is, and no. And I got annoyed and closed the book and don't regret it. Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. This is a high epic fantasy series, much beloved by people in the fantasy community. It didn't work for me. It's very, I didn't even make it past like the first chapter. Maybe I read the first chapter, but I definitely stopped within the second chapter. This was an ebook read for me because it was for, I think I got it for free on Amazon Prime. In any case, it's giving Lord of the Rings. It's going to be one of those high epic fantasies with a bromance that carries you basically from the beginning of the saga to the end, if what I understood about it was correct. It's not the type of book that I like. So I just stopped it there, and I won't be continuing in that series. And then lastly, I DNF'd Patriot. I'm so sorry to Chess of Chess's Book Nook if you are watching this. I actually picked it up on audio because I was turned on by your review of it. At some point, about 5 or 6 hours into the audio, though, I just didn't, it's not that I didn't care, because I hate to say that when it's somebody's personal memoir, but the truth is I didn't care. Like, I really wasn't interested in the story anymore. It's, I guess, not what I thought it would be. It's a memoir of a lawyer who basically it was a political prisoner, and I don't know, I lost interest in it, and I just didn't want to listen to it anymore. And I hate that, especially when it's a memoir, because somebody is basically bearing their soul, laying it all down on the line, and I'm saying, no, you don't count, you know? And it's not that the person doesn't count, like, I don't want it to come across that way, but it was just not a story that I felt an interest in continuing. So, like, I don't know how to say that without making myself look bad, but yeah, it was just not for me. Very, very political. I did appreciate what I heard, but not enough to finish it. So, you know, it happens sometimes with memoirs. Either they intrigue me and I want to read it from A to Z or listen to it from the beginning to the end. But this one just, I don't know. I ended up not liking it, so I just gave it back to the library. All right, let's talk about the books that I do physically have and did read. The first one that I have is Jodi Picoult's A Spark of Light. So this one, I have a physical copy, obviously, but I did listen to it on audio, and it was really good. It was my first 5-star read of this month. It's not my first 5-star of Jodi Picoult, although all of her books are not 5-star reads for me. This one happened to be. I think it's her second 5-star for me this year, if I'm not mistaken. The first one that I gave 5 stars to was Second Glance, but that was like way at the beginning of the year in January. But I read this one. It has to do with a shooting at an abortion clinic, and I would say that it was a good audio. I enjoyed it. Again, in terms of her reveals, some of you guys might find them a bit predictable. I know that when I read the Goodreads reviews after having left my own, because I try and always write my reviews first and then read other people's, so as like not to bias my own reaction to the reviews, or my own reaction to the book, I should say. But yeah, you know, I would say that the audio version could be a little bit confusing because there are timeline jumps, and the audio doesn't necessarily cover the timeline jumps, so you want to be wary of that. I think that maybe I can find it if I look at a chapter break. Yeah, if I look at a chapter break, you're going to see, I don't know if it'll come into focus for you, but it does say 2 p.m. These are things that the audiobook doesn't necessarily tell you, that there's going to be time jumps. And the way that the book starts out is like, it starts out at somewhere in the middle of the day, and then it goes forward to the end of the day, and then it jumps backward to the beginning of the day or to events leading up to the day. So I think that Picoult has, you know, explored a different way of storytelling in this book, but I mean, I really enjoyed it. It's certainly what you've come to expect from this author. It's a very gray area. All sides of the issue are represented, fleshed out quite well. You can always tell that Picot does her research really well. So yeah, I mean, this, again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, is not an author that I ever thought would be for me, but I'm really, really liking her writing, and I'm glad that she has so many books in her arsenal, because I will be reading the backlist, or as much of it as I can. The Monster of Elendhaven, a very forgettable novella by a Canadian author. Again, when I was in it, I enjoyed my time, but if you ask me what it's about now, I could not tell you. It is super forgettable. That's all there is to say. Very forgettable. What I remember about it is how forgettable it is. It's supposed to be like a horror, queer horror novella. It wasn't very good. Voyage of the Shadowmoon. Okay, this is the only book that I read this month that I did not count in any of my reading stats, because I started this book in July, really reading a few pages at a time before I went to bed. So it took me like 4 months to finish it. So I did not read all 565 pages in the month of October. I didn't count it in any of my reading stats. This is a sort of, I guess I want to say satirical in a way, fantasy, piratey, political situation on an Earth-adjacent planet. I did report upon this book in an earlier vlog when I ended up finishing it. It does for sure give live ship. I'm not gonna lie, I picked it up because of the cover, but it's a very, very different creature altogether. You have a bunch of people on this planet who all have their own agendas and they want to be political climbers. You have a vampire who is 700 years old in the body of a 14-year-old boy, and he wears like fake mustache, fake beard. It's very funny, and it's like constantly falling off his face because he's trying to look older, which is really funny. You have these two priestesses who are the last of their order, because when the book opens, and it's not a spoiler or anything, there's this war general, Schwartzman, who he acquires, you don't see it on this cover, but if I can find another cover of the book, I'll show you, and I'll circle it for you so you can see it. He acquires this kind of suit where if somebody puts the suit on, they become the host of a creature called Silver Death, and Silver Death can eradicate complete continents. And these two priestesses happen to be on the Shadowmoon, going on some sort of a journey when that continent is summarily destroyed. So they're the last two. So those are two characters, and we're following them as well as the crew of the Shadowmoon. And there's Farron, who is the skipper, I guess, of the Shadowmoon, but he has his own political agenda. And then you have a king who has been disgraced, and he's trying to get his reputation back in order. And you have a wizard by the name of Ensel who is watching all these things happen and biding his time, and has his own agenda as well about what's happening with War Sovereign, and the fact that he is trying to basically reorganize the entire political, economical, and social structure of this planet. And then of course you have some very strong and present women who each have their own stories to tell. Like there's Lady Wensimer, who is a scholar, and she's kind of heavyset, and that's referenced a little bit in the book, but still very attractive. It's kind of hard to summarize this book. As you can see, I'm having quite a difficult time in terms of telling you what the plot is, but I think that you're following this book more for the characters. And also what I found was really lacking is the lack of a map, and I don't believe that a map was ever conceived for this series. Now, this book was written as a standalone, so it's not absolutely necessary to read the rest of the Moonworld saga, because that's what it's from, but there are other books where the characters, I believe, do come back. Some of the characters do come back, and I do have my eye out for them, but it's not a priority read. This was published in 2002. I don't know if there are still copies available. If they are, you'll find them on eBay, because I know that these are out of print, but I had a good time with it. Check out my review on Goodreads for something a lot more coherent. So this one, as you know, I have a physical copy of, but I happen to have done it on audio. It was really great. It's T. Kingfisher. This is the second book in the Saint of Steel series, Paladin's Strength. And yeah, I mean, it's just like a really fun romantasy read. You have some of the same characters from the Paladin's Grace that will come back, but they take sort of like a secondary or lesser role in this novel. Again, there's no notes. It's T. Kingfisher. There's nothing really more to say. If you've started the series, read them in order, because then you'll know who the characters are. But other than that, I mean, there's no notes. It was great. It was my second 5-star read this month. I also read Garlic and the Vampire. I know a lot of people have been reading Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch. I didn't like it. I'm not going to continue. I don't know. It took me all of 15 minutes to read, but I don't see the point in spending another 15 minutes reading Garlic and the Witch. I don't know. I think I'd rather sort of focus on other things. It's not really for me. I was not expecting a graphic novel. I don't know. I read it, but it's kind of forgettable. Okay, controversial one now. I read The Raven Scholar, okay? I read The Raven Scholar, all 600 some odd pages of it. Initially, I gave it a 4-star, but then I took some time to sit and stew about it, read some other reviews, watch some videos, gather some opinions of people other than my own, and I feel like I want to sort of downgrade my rating, but I'm not going to do that. And I'll explain to you a little bit why. So I think that possibly a lot of you that are watching have either read or heard about The Raven Scholar. This is from an author who I've never read before, but who I happen to know worked in the publishing industry or works in the publishing industry. So she seems to know mathematically what will make a book sell. So she has this cast of characters that are in their mid-30s that do act like they are teenagers, which is a huge kind of turnoff. But I gave it the benefit of the doubt, considering that the book opens when they are children, and then when you next see them, they are in their 30s, and they're kind of fighting for control over the empire, which basically in this society is such that an emperor can only rule for a period of 24 years, at which point a trial then ensues in which a new emperor is chosen, and they have to go through, the players in this book have to basically go through that trial, and we're trying to see who is going to follow the current emperor and become the new emperor. That's basically the premise. But that in and of itself would have made a great fantasy series, and I kind of wish and kind of think that the author would have, it might have been better served had she just stuck to one thing. Because integrated into about the middle point of the book is a murder mystery where one of the contenders dies, and then the protagonist that we're following has to sort of not only compete in this trial, but also find out who the murderer is and what the conspiracy is, and clear her own name in the process. So there is a lot going on in this novel. And even though I originally gave it 4 stars, I can tell you right away that I am not going to be continuing in this series. It is just too wacky, too wild, too much going on. It's like trying to bite off more than you could chew, and you really, really feel it. And also, like, the prologue was arguably the best part of the book. It really set me up to think that I was going to read something of immaculate quality, and it really just wasn't that by the end. It wasn't that by the end. So again, I read it. I'm not going to downgrade my star rating. I'm going to leave it at 4 because that's what I felt at the time that I finished it. But it was a library read, and I will not be continuing in the series because I just, in retrospect, yeah, and you're going to see this a little bit later in the video because we're going to be talking about another one that my feelings are pretty much same. I just think that this book kind of lost its equilibrium about halfway through and was just not strong enough to pick it up again or save it from whatever pit it had fallen into. So it's just not something I'm going to be continuing in. Okay, The Examiner. It was my first book by Janice Hallett. This was a mixed media murder mystery. There was a particular character, I think her name was Jem, who I absolutely wanted to die. Like, I wanted to kill her. I wanted to throttle her myself. So yeah, I really enjoyed the book. By the end of the book, this one character that I was really not a fan of kind of grew on me and changed my whole perspective. And yeah, I just had a really great time in that, and it makes me want to read more from the author. So if you like a nice multimedia, just a straightforward murder mystery, that's a lot of fun. If you don't know this author, I had a really great time. Okay, next I read The Mask of Mirrors. Now, if you guys remember, this was pulled as one of the October prompts, and I think it was for the prompt that said read a book that has a prologue. This book had a prologue. It is over 600 pages of political machinations, and the world building is extremely complex in this book. And I actually ended up listening to this book on audio because anyone who has ever seen the inside of this book will know that there are quite a lot of impronounceable names and places and titles and all kinds of things, which normally would be a huge turnoff for me, and I would just close the book and I would say, nope, next, moving on. But there's so many people, mind you that this book is not super popular, it doesn't really have a lot of ratings, but there's a lot of people that I follow on BookTube that have read this book, and I see it in their backgrounds all the time. But here's the thing, I'm not going to continue in this series. Like, it was just way too much for me. I think if the books were available on audio from my library, I may continue in this series, but I found it to be way too long, extremely complex for no reason. I wasn't interested in all of the, like, You know, it has a lot to do with high society, how they intermingle, what is polite, what is impolite. Essentially, at its core, you have a grifter who was born and raised on the streets of this society, and she's trying to con her way into living a higher life in high society to get her sister, it's like her foster sister or adopted sister, off the street, but it's like essentially a found family situation. And she's trying to sort of move up the ranks, and sort of accidentally in the process, she helps to completely change the political and economical atmosphere of the society in which they live. And I just felt that the book was too long. It droned on and on. There were a lot of like societal, I don't know societal, but like, it's not the right word. I also think that it was supposed to be a romantasy. I did not get any hints of romance happening in this book at all. And I feel like because my library does not have copies on audio of books 2 and 3, that it's not likely that I'm going to continue in the series, because I just don't have the mental bandwidth to want to pick up this book physically. I just don't have it. I feel like if those of you who have read it or have read the whole series, please let me know if the pacing is going to pick up. Because is it just that the first book is very expository and that's what my problem is? Like too much info dumping potentially in this book, not really a lot of plot movement. And I feel like maybe it's that's kind of bothering me about it. If the other 2 books pick up pace and if they're drastically different, let me know. Maybe I will try and pick them up, or I'll borrow them on e-reader and see how they go. But otherwise, my libraries don't have audio copies of this. I don't really want to resubscribe to Audible or to spend money trying to listen to these books, which I kind of feel are not that great, honestly. And maybe it's just not the type of subject that I like. I'm not really sure. You know, the magic system is very well plotted out. The political system, the geography, everything is super well thought of in this. And this author is like a collaboration, this author. It's actually written by like 2 different authors. They work together to create this series. But I don't know. I don't know if it's for me, because I don't know if I have the patience to go on with it. And I'm glad I made it to the end, because I did want to know who the Rook was. Now I do, and to my credit, I did not look up spoilers, but I very, very nearly looked up spoilers, because that's how close I came to losing my patience with this book. So I'm very curious as to what your guys' thoughts are on this, and whether or not you think it's worth it for me to continue, because I'm not leaning towards continuing in this series, if I'm honest. It's requiring a lot of me to do that. So here's another physical book that I own that I listened to on audio. This is the second in the Thursday Murder Club series. Again, no notes, no notes. It was really nice to return to this world. You feel like you're hanging out with old friends, or potentially even your grandparents, or potentially even people that you like more than your own grandparents. But I don't know. I don't judge. But yeah, I mean, I had a really good time with this. I love the humor in it. We really get to know the characters a lot more. And we see Elizabeth and we get introduced to a little more of her past. So you have a 3rd-person narrator telling you the story, and then you have Joyce's thoughts on what's going on. So you have 2 narrator points of view here. But yeah, I mean, this is the second in a series. There's not really much to say. You have to read the first one in order to appreciate the character's growth and change in the second one, but I'm definitely going to be continuing with this series. I already have a copy of The Bullet That Missed, but I think that I'm going to end up doing this one on audio in November, because my hold just came in this morning, so it's definitely going to be a priority for me, because I have 21 days to listen to it. But yeah, so I have this one to look forward to. This one was great. And along the same lines, I did end up reading Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. This is the second in the Ernest Cunningham mystery series by Australian author and comedian Benjamin Stevenson. It's very tongue-in-cheek. I really enjoyed it. It is very Agatha Christie-esque, kind of like Murder on the Orient Express, which I'm pretty sure is where he got a lot of the plot lines from. Although I'm not going to say that it completely follows that story arc. There's obviously a spin on it, but I like the way that they break the fourth wall a few times in this book, even though it's a first-person narrative. Again, it's one of those, I don't want to say a cozy mystery, but it's a fun, satirical time, and I really enjoy Stevenson's humor. I listened to this one on audio because work schedule, timelines, and that, but I do have a copy which was also thrifted, and yeah, I would definitely read more from this author. Next, I read A Fractured Fairy Tale, or a fairy tale retelling This Princess Kills Monsters, which is a retelling of The 12 Huntsmen, and this is by Rye Herman, who is a queer author, and there are queer characters in this novel as well. It started out really strong for me. Like, I was getting 5-star vibes, and you guys know how much I love a fairy tale retelling, and I want to say that it is very much Monty Python crosses Princess Bride, and that is exactly what you're going to get. I feel like around the middle of the book, my one critique is that the humor kind of lost its luster and took a back seat to battle scenes, which I could have done without. Now, I want to say that in parentheses because I am not a battle scene person. I am somebody, and I think that's kind of why I'm putting off finishing The Fury of the Gods by John Gwynne, because there were so many battle scenes in The Hunger of the Gods, and I feel like John Gwynne kind of lost his way with that book a little bit. Like, he went off on a tangent that I'm not sure that I was able to follow, and I'm having a lot of trouble with that tangent coming back down to the core of the book. So I have been putting off reading The Fury of the Gods for that reason, because the battle scenes, when there are too many battle scenes in a book, I get bored. I lose interest. I skip pages. I'm not going to lie, because I just don't want to read battle scenes. I don't care for them in movies either. In movies where there are big battle scenes, that's when I'm going to get up and I'm going to go pee or get myself a snack, and I'm going to say to the person I'm watching the movie with, no, don't pause, don't worry. But they always inevitably end up pausing, which I'm like, eye roll, because the reason I'm leaving is because the scene is boring and I don't care about battle scenes. So there were quite a few battle scenes in this book, and that's where I think the author lost me. But I did come back to it. I did finish it, but for that reason, I gave it 3 stars instead of the 4.5 that I was kind of hoping to give it. Because yeah, it lost its luster, it lost its equilibrium somewhere in the 60 to 85% range. And then at that point, I was so jaded that I kind of had to force myself to finish it. But it did end in the way that you might predict. And yeah, it's, I want to say, a queer love story adjacent thing, but you'd have to read it to find out who loves who and why. Okay, so I just looked at my notes and I see that I have skipped a book that I wanted to talk to you about in the order that I read it. So let's backtrack a little, and I'm going to talk to you about The Darkness by Ragnar Jonasson. This was a book that I took out from the library based on a recommendation from Fina Reads, who said that it was a great book to get into. I read it. It's part of the Hulda series. So she is a police detective who we meet on the weeks leading up to, or days leading up to, her retirement. And she's kind of being given the boot as we meet her because her supervisor just is not being very nice to her. He's trying to get her out with the old and in with the new. He has someone to replace her with, and he wants her to clear out her office. And you know, because he's given her kind of like 2 weeks to hang around, he tells her, you can pretty much look at cold cases, and we follow her, you know, just to keep her busy and keep her placated so she doesn't have to leave 2 weeks earlier than she was mentally prepared to do. He lets her look at cold cases. So she picks up a cold case and we follow her on that journey. The Darkness is good. It was my first by this author. I really liked the ending. I know that some people had problems with the ending, but I really liked the ending. I was not expecting that ending, and I did not have a problem with that ending. So I think I ended up giving this book 4 stars, notwithstanding the things that are generally lost in translation due to language differences and cultural differences and that type of thing. But yeah, that was my first of this author this month. Next, I read Death at the Sanatorium, which I did not realize at the time that I bought this, because this was a book I bought at Book Outlet but ended up listening to on audio anyway. But I didn't realize at the time that it was a crossover series. So you have the Hulda series, which was The Darkness, and then Hulda ends up in this book as well as one of the characters that we meet. And this is part of the Helgi trilogy. And these stories take place in Iceland, and it's a, it's just a good time. It's a very straightforward, very reliable murder mystery situation, which of course has to do with a death at a sanatorium where they used to treat cases of tuberculosis. And one day the nurse that goes in the morning discovers that one of her colleagues is dead, and then they have to sort of figure out how she died, who the killer is. You know, it's a murder mystery, but that's basically the setup. But then you see some characters crossing over from The Darkness into this book, and I think that I didn't know that, right? So like, it's not like I read these books in publication order or otherwise. I just knew from Goodreads that they weren't part of the same series, so I figured, okay, I'm okay to go ahead. But I'm kind of glad that I read them in the order that I did, because when I realized that Hulda showed up in this book, I'm like, oh my God, okay, yes. And then when I met Helgi in this book, I realized who he is vis-a-vis the other book. So anyway, I mean, if I could do it again, I would do it again exactly the same way. So if you've read them both, then you'll understand my my preference, and I'm happy to discuss any spoilers in the comments if you do want to discuss these two books, okay? But reading two of the same author was accidental for this. I just kind of felt because I really liked The Darkness, and because I had this one on my list, and because it was available as an audiobook when I needed an audiobook to listen to, it just sort of was the perfect storm, but I'm glad it happened this way. And then the last book that I read this month is also from an author that I already read this month, and that is What Stalks the Deep by T. Kingfisher. So I've read a romantasy by her and now a horror by her this month. Again, it's T. Kingfisher. This is the third in the Sworn Soldier series. It's with Alex Easton, who is our queer protagonist, and you get that same very dry humor. I love the way that Alex talks to the audience from time to time, or the reader from time to time. There's not really much I can say about this without sort of giving away, well, I don't know, you don't really, I would say, need to read the other books in order to read this one. They only make slight references in passing to the previous two novellas. This one has to do with our protagonist traveling from Europe to America, where his friend Dr. Denton, I believe his name is, has inherited a mine, and there are strange goings on happening in the mine, and his cousin, Denton's cousin Oliver, has gone missing. So it's kind of like a whodunit mystery horror situation happening here, and Alex is brought in to sort of help with the investigation to find, is it Oliver or Oscar? I think it's Oscar. I have to look it up. It's Oscar. I don't know why I said Oliver, but yeah. They have to find Oscar, and they have to find out why there are strange lights coming from the depths of a mine, and they have to deal with all of the dangers that one would expect in terms of like poisonous gases, things becoming flammable, all that kind of jazz as they're going through this sort of mystery scenario. So yeah, that's what's happening, but I think you're reading it more for the character, more for Alex Easton's journey. Again, you know, no notes. This is the third in the series. If a fourth one comes out, I'll probably read that too. So that is going to bring us to the end of the October wrap up. I hope you guys had a good time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and listening to my thoughts on the books that I read. I would love to know from you guys in the comments which of the books that I've read that you have read. And also, I asked you like a whole bunch of questions throughout the script of this video, which I kind of have a script for, but also kind of wing. So if you guys were intrigued by any of those questions and you want to discuss them with me in the comments, read The Mask of Mirrors, should I continue in it, or any of the books that I DNF'd that you guys are triggered by the fact that I DNF'd, let me know in the comments. And until next time, this is Zahava saying thanks for being here, and I will see you again soon. Ciao for now.